Hello and welcome to another episode of Geography Made Easy. In these videos, we try to make difficult geographical concepts easy. Today, we will be dealing with the second part of the chapter Weathering. Today, we will be talking about chemical and biological weathering. The video on physical weathering or mechanical weathering is made and I'm sharing the link in the description box. Please feel free to look at it if you have any doubts. So what is chemical and we already know that there are three types of weathering: mechanical weathering, chemical and biological. In the previous video, we have discussed about mechanical weathering where we spoke about how rocks can break down because of weather elements, and this breakdown is purely mechanical in nature. So expansion and contraction, freeze and thaw, these were the mechanisms which can lead to the disintegration of the rocks. In mechanical weathering, no chemical change takes place in the rock. Today we will be discussing chemical weathering followed by biological weathering. In both these weathering processes, we will see that there is a change in the chemical composition of the rock. However, biological weathering deals with both mechanical and chemical weathering, and we'll discuss how this happens. The first type of chemical weathering which we will be discussing today is dissolution. What is dissolution? Dissolution is the disintegration of rocks because when there are soluble minerals in the rock which is getting dissolved. So we have given the example of, say, disprin, and we have all at some point of time had disprin when we have had fever or body ache. So if you put a tablet of disprin in water, we will slowly see that the solid disprin water slowly dissolves in the water. Similarly, certain minerals in the rocks can dissolve in water. However, there is no chemical change or chemical reaction in this case, only the dissolution of the mineral. So, for example, this over time changes and dissolves in water. So this process is known as dissolution, where we slowly see the disintegration of the rock. So one of the structures which can be commonly seen because of dissolution can be the honeycomb structure. So we had certain rocks, we have certain minerals in these rocks where rainwater has dissolved that rock, and now we see holes or the honeycomb structure which looks like the beehive getting formed. This kind of structure sometimes is seen because of the dissolution process which is taking place. Mostly this is a desert area as we have seen in the examples, and so when there is a flash flood or when there is scanty rainfall, whenever there is rainfall and when the rainwater is falling in these on these structures, we can see that the soluble minerals is getting dissolved and now we have these empty spaces. These are two more examples of dissolution, and we have the weathering, chemical weathering taking place. This is very commonly seen if you look at very old monuments, especially in areas which is hot and humid, because chemical weathering will require water. So we can see that this statue has features which are very blurred, and this blurring has taken place because of the dissolution effect of weathering, chemical weathering. Similarly, this fairy, we see this very commonly if we go to graveyards. We see that these tombstones which are exposed to the elements are constantly getting weathered, and sometimes we also see that very old tombstones we cannot read the names which are written on the tombstones. So this is because water has dissolved the rocks, the rock has got weathered, and in this case mostly chemical weathering has taken place. Next we come to carbonation. So how is carbonation different from dissolution? Carbonation is when again we have the role of water, because as I have said that water plays a very important role in the weathering process. So when water and carbon dioxide, they react to form mild carbonic or carbonic based acids, when these react with stones which are soluble and they precipitate to form a completely new kind of a mineral, then this kind of weathering which leads to the change in the form or the disintegration of the rock is called carbonation. So this is the classic example which we see here, where we have carbon dioxide reacting with water to get carbonic acid. This mild carbonic acid will react with the limestone, sometimes with marble or any kind of rock which is soft in nature, mostly sedimentary rocks, and they will form a new kind of mineral which is the calcium bicarbonate. So we commonly see this in the karst or the limestone areas. We also see acid rain taking place in certain parts of the world, and this kind of conversion is seen where we see that the process of chemical weathering, carbonation, is taking place. So the stalactites and stalagmites we see in the caves, these are calcium bicarbonates which have formed and precipitated, and this is an irreversible process. So we will get a completely new kind of mineral which is not going to go back to the original form. Next we have the hydration. Hydration involves water combining with another rock which is leading to the breakdown of the rock. However, in certain cases we can say that hydration is a reversible process. That means that in this case we see mudstones. So when the water is combining with the mudstone, it is changing, but again we sometimes see that when the water is drying out, we will get back the mudstone in its original form, or certain this muddy area in its original form. A good example of this is if we look at any kind of soap such as Rin or any other soap which we use to wash our clothes, especially if you live in a place which has very high humidity or moisture. During the monsoons on the rainy season, we will see that the soap becomes soggy, and again in the period when it becomes dry, it is back to normal. Similarly, if we see the same thing happening with salt. So these are natural elements which absorb the atmospheric moisture and their form changes, but the process, as I have mentioned here, is reversible. So this is not an irreversible process, it can come back to its original form. But hydration can also lead to the breakdown of the rock. So chemical change might not take place in the rock, but the rock can disintegrate and can break down. However, we have hydrolysis. Hydrolysis is the process by which water ion is reacting with the rock, and we get a completely new kind of rock or mineral. So we have feldspar, which is a mineral changing into kaolinite or clay, a different kind of mineral. And this is the chemical reaction for hydrolysis. So we have potassium feldspar plus hydrogen ions, that is, and water. We get kaolinite, potassium ions again, and silica. So kaolinite is the new product which gets created, and of course this leads to the breakdown of the rocks. We can see here that the feldspar looks very different and the kaolinite looks absolutely very different. So this is the difference between hydration and hydrolysis. Hydrolysis is a reversible process, but hydration is a reversible process, but hydrolysis is a irreversible process. So there will not be any kind of change in the we cannot get back feldspar from kaolinite, but we can get back the mud in the dry form after the rainy season is over. Next, we have a very commonly seen chemical weathering. Again, this is mostly seen in areas which are very moist. So atmospheric moisture has to be high, and this process is called oxidation. Oxidation is when oxygen combines with atmospheric moisture to form oxides, and in most cases we see iron. So iron is changing to form iron oxide, and iron oxide is called rust. So any kind of element which combines with oxygen, atmospheric oxygen, to form a new kind of mineral and disintegration, this is called oxidation. Rusting is the most common oxidation process which is seen, and we can see that the iron, this is the iron which has not yet been oxidized, and we see rusting has taken place. We can see that the color difference is there, it is reddish. So rusting or oxidation leads to different kinds of soil being formed. So we have reddish colored soils which actually are formed because of oxidation, and the presence of reddish color sometimes tells us that oxidation has taken place in the rock, and this is also a irreversible process. So we cannot get back the iron from the rust. So once the rusting has begun, the process will continue. We cannot get back the original iron from the rust. So now we come to biological weathering. So biological weathering, what is biological weathering? Biological weathering is when living organisms, and in this case we limit ourselves to flora and fauna, plants and animals, which help in the breakdown of rocks. Now, biological weathering can take place in two ways. One is it helps in mechanical weathering, and in many cases it also enhances chemical weathering. So actually biological weathering is a combination of both mechanical and chemical weathering. So in this diagram, in this photo, sorry, we see that there has been mechanical weathering. The roots of the banyan tree is breaking down the stairs here, the rocks here. So this is a mechanical weathering which is taken place. But if we see here in this photograph, we can see that plants are growing in the rock. Of course, this is also, that is mechanical weathering. The roots of the plants are actually exerting root pressure, which is leading to the breakdown of the rock. So it is enhancing the mechanical weathering process. And also we see that the leaves or the leaf litter of the plant which is growing in the rock, the leaf litter is falling here, and this is getting accumulated. With time this is getting decomposed. So fine, when it is getting decomposed, we see that mild acids are formed. These mild acids sometimes react with the rocks and lead to chemical weathering. So in this way we see that chemical weathering as well as mechanical weathering can take place in biological weathering. We can see very well here the footpath. Along the footpath we can see that the root has grown and it is shattering the footpath. And here we are seeing an example of where mechanical as well as chemical weathering is taking place at the same time. Biological weathering, as I have already said, can also be done by animals or fauna, and mostly by burrowing animals. So we have the rodents, we have rabbits, we have squirrels, we have rats, who are even we have these insects which dig into the soil and they help in the mixing of the soil. Sometimes they dig into the rocks and they lead to enhancement of weathering. So these holes are acting as inlets through which more and more the weather elements can enter deep into the rock or the soil and lead to weathering. So burrowing animals help in in biological weathering. So they sometimes also assist in mechanical as well as chemical weathering. So we sometimes see animals like rabbits, and we sometimes also see tiny insects do this kind of weathering. So if you have any doubts and questions, please feel free to comment, to leave a comment in the chat section. If you like my video, please share it with your friends, and please do not forget to subscribe to my channel. Thank you so much. Till then, we'll meet in the next video. Thank you.